Good evening and welcome to tonight's edition of Artbeat with myself, Ciara Murphy. On tonight's show, I will be talking to Anna Wolfe, co-author of Polish Theatre Ireland's new production, The Passengers, at Dublin's The New Theatre. And I will also be talking to Paul Carmichael, an actor in Purplecoat Productions' upcoming Shakespeare double bill in Dublin's Smock Alley Theatre. Now, thanks very much for joining us on the line tonight, Paul.
My pleasure, Ciara.
So, Purplecoat are undertaking the mammoth task of a Shakespearean double bill, but they've had success there before, is that correct?
That's right, yeah. 12th night. We brought over to Smock Alley last year. It was very well received. We sold out, and so we thought, well, how can we top that? So we thought the best way to do it, and it seemed like such a good idea at the time, was to bring over two of Shakespeare's biggest and most well-known plays, so both A Midsummer Night's Dream and also Hamlet. So we're bringing them over, two different plays with just the one cast, yeah.
Wow, that is a big undertaking.
Yeah.
So, Paul, your own role then in this, what characters are you playing in these two productions?
Well, I'm playing Lysander in A Midsummer Night's Dream, and I'm playing Polonius in Hamlet. And it's interesting that when I was asked to play the two roles, I think with Shakespeare, in general, you have sort of ideas, don't you, as to, well, I know that play or I know that part. And when I was asked to play Polonius, I thought, well, I know who he is. He's this rather avuncular figure. He's a little bit boring and all this. And I couldn't have been more wrong if I'd have tried. Because in Carl, our director, we have someone who, he doesn't accept how Shakespeare should be just because everybody else has done it like that. So I think that I've ended up playing two characters who are absolutely not anything like any interpretation I've seen, which for me as an actor is an absolute gift.
And Shakespeare, for you, Paul, is that something that's kind of a large part of your repertoire?
It absolutely is, yeah. I teach Shakespeare to kids who are 16, 17 years old in Liverpool, and it's been my sort of passion, I suppose, for about 25 years now, performing it. I think that for an actor, you come a little bit more alive when you're performing Shakespeare. There's something about the language, and the fact that you can go for it as a performer. Once you get over the initial sort of fear of I don't want to forget the lines here, once you get away from that, you can just enjoy this rather passionate language and just enjoy the experience of being on stage and delivering, I suppose, yeah.
And Shakespeare and Ireland have quite a beautiful relationship in a way that even though Ireland features very little in Shakespeare's plays, like Shakespeare's popularity over here in theatre and the reimaginings of theatre of Shakespeare that we have here are so popular and so wide-reaching. Do you think that's part of the reason that Purplecoat Productions' version of The Twelfth Night and the upcoming Dublin Bill have been so popular here?
I hope so, yeah. I think that I hope that we're developing quite a relationship with Dublin. I mean, for me, this will only be my third time over to Dublin. But I think that possibly what we do is we approach the text, whether they're comedy or tragedy, we approach them with a real sense of humour, I suppose. We're looking for a way to ensure that the audience have a really, really good night. Obviously, with any Shakespeare piece, you know, you're going to have to come along and focus on it. But then again, what we try and make sure is that you also have a really good night's entertainment. I think that just the love of the performance and the fact that we do go the extra mile with the performances in every way that we can, I think maybe that comes through, and I suspect that could be part of the reason, yeah.
And I suppose, like, developing these two massive undertakings, you know, like across the pond and having to come over here and situate them in Smock Alley Theatre, that must have its challenges amongst the fact that you are an ensemble doing two massive plays.
Well, it does, yeah. I mean, the first one I would say is the fact that I'm a terribly nervous flyer. I avoid it like the plague. So next Tuesday morning at around about 6 o'clock, I will be an absolute bag of nerves. The fact that there's 14 of us travelling across, I suppose, is a mammoth undertaking, which Siobhan, our producer, she's managed us admirably with that. And yeah, it's just a huge undertaking in general, and the idea that we're going to just be living with each other, trying to perform these two huge pieces of theatre. It's going to be an incredibly intense time for us, but one which which I think the whole company is genuinely excited about. We've basically finished rehearsal now. We've run the plays. We know that they are where they should be. We're happy with them. We love the fact that they are so different from any Shakespeare that may have been seen before. And we believe that the audience are in for a really, really good night's entertainment with us.
And just to bring back to the venue, so Smock Alley is kind of a perfect example of, like, you know, old traditional Dublin, like meeting something that's a little bit more contemporary. And that's probably a very good pairing for the brand of Shakespeare that you guys are bringing to the theatre.
I think so, yeah. I think that I love watching Shakespeare in all of its many different ways. I mean, I love going to the Globe Theatre and watching Shakespeare being performed there, but that's only one way. And I think that the key thing with any classical work, but especially Shakespeare, is that you're kind of obligated as a performer, a director, a producer, to keep reimagining it all the time. Because if you don't, then it will die out. You know, these plays couldn't have survived for 400 years if they'd have been continuously being performed by people wearing velvet pantaloons. At the end of the day, you've got to always look for a way of making them relevant. And I think the way to do that is you actually look at the text, because the text is, yeah, it's so well written. There's a reason that people talk so much about Shakespeare. And the fact is that beyond everything else, he's such a good writer. And you can interpret these lines in so many ways, which is what we've done here. We've brought both of these pieces absolutely up to date in terms of their setting. And as I was saying before, I think we've looked at them from the point of view of, well, why do we have to perform them in a certain way? Just because everybody else always does this, is there another way that this text could be interpreted? So we are being absolutely faithful to the text, but could we look at it in a different way?
Yeah, and it's interesting because, you know, I've seen many Shakespearean reimaginings where they haven't been faithful to the text, where they've updated the language into kind of like contemporary dialogue as well. Yes,
and generally speaking, it doesn't work. I mean, the genius of Shakespeare, I think, is the actual language and the way that it's said. I honestly think that if you say Shakespeare without any of the pretensions behind it and the idea that you need to stand on stage and roar for some reason, if you avoid all those sort of ideas and you look for the basic emotional truth, how's this character feeling right now? Are they happy? Are they sad? Are they in love? Are they feeling revengeful? If you look for that and you just deliver the line in that way, then I think that the audience don't actually struggle. I don't think that there is a language barrier there.
Yeah, no, and I would agree, because, I mean, the wonderful thing about Shakespeare, besides the fact that the skill of the language and the melody of the language, is the fact that the themes that he used are so universal, and they reach, you know, up to contemporary times, and they'll probably reach up for another 400 years. So, I mean, it's a universal theme, I suppose. So, like, by updating the language, it's not really necessary, because people, I believe, you know, can engage with it in that way while you bring it to a contemporary setting.
Oh, I absolutely believe that, yeah. I mean, you can look at all different ways of reimagining these pieces. Obviously, I don't want to give too much away, but something that happened recently in England was Maxine Peake played Hamlet. She played it, she was a female actress playing Hamlet as a male. Well, we have a female Hamlet, but it's very much that we have a female Hamlet. The character and the actor are both female. And it's worked so easily. You might think with that, well, how is it going to work? But it just has, and it's given the play so many more layers. And then we've taken it back in time slightly, so we've given it this 1980s sort of This Is England setting. And from that, we've simply gone from the idea of something is rotten in the state of Denmark to something is rotten on the estate of Denmark. And it's lent itself beautifully to that idea.
That sounds fascinating, because I'm a fan of Shakespeare, and I love to see, when people imagine it, in that sort of way. I mean, it can really be, badly done, but it can also really be fabulously done. And you have an impressive selection of supporters, Stephen Fry and the Royal Shakespeare Company, coming out to give you guys support in this venture.
We absolutely do, yeah. Stephen Fry funded the company going down to London because he believed in the company's work and wants us to go further. And then a subsequent trip down to London was funded by Richard Wilson from One Foot in the Grave. And there's been 3 occasions now where the company has worked with the RSC. The first time was a production of Titus Andronicus, which Michael Boyd, who's the now former artistic director Orchestra of the RSC personally helped with, and Midsummer Night's Dream twice, once with the company and once with the Purplecoat Youth Theatre. They performed for the RSC with that play as well.
Excellent. And I mean, I suppose in terms of accessibility then, I mean, we've kind of already established that these set of plays are really for everybody, but I mean, like, is that really the case?
Well, I think we could say that Midsummer Night's Dream is absolutely for everyone.
Yeah.
That's bring your family down, and I can guarantee you it's a lovely, solid piece of writing, and it's just so funny. Everybody thinks that they know the play, but I think that we've managed to come up with enough twists on it. Certainly there's the well-known lovers fight between myself and Jack Spencer, who's playing Demetrius, along with Helen and Hermias. So there's the four of us doing this fight scene, which lasts about 10 minutes, and by the end of it, I'm absolutely exhausted, and if I'm honest, not wearing an awful lot. But nevertheless, that is actually one for the whole family, whereas Hamlet, we've said with Hamlet, basically 15 and over, because it is such a dark play when you start to look into it. And we're just, I suppose we are pushing things quite a way. I mean, again, for me as Polonius, normally Polonius, of course, dies in the play, and it's a very straightforward death, hiding behind a curtain and one single knife wound through the curtain. And we thought, can we take this any further? So that's become quite a tricky little set piece that lasts about a minute and a half. Again, by the end of that one, I'm absolutely exhausted, I have to say. But unlike the play how it's usually done, for example, the death of Polonius possibly isn't the last time that you see him, but I don't want to give too much away there. But we are, nevertheless, we can do all that, but I can honestly say we are staying absolutely honest to the text. The only difference, I think, that you might find is that Hamlet people may think of as being this incredibly sweeping and incredibly long play. When we've run the play, we are just absolutely shocked by the speed with which we get to the interval. It feels like it's so quick. And then we get to the end of the play before you'd know it. It's amazing to get through the play. I think that's partly because of the energy, partly because we have edited the script down just a little bit. But the play it carries itself, if you know what I mean. It's a wonderfully energetic and enthralling piece of theatre, and I think that even if you think you know Hamlet, even if you think you know A Midsummer Night's Dream, then I can promise you don't know what we're going to do with it yet, and I hope it's worth a look.
Well, Paul, I can't think of a better way to end this segment. It sounds absolutely fantastic. And the show runs from the 8th to the 11th of April, interspersing Hamlet with A Midsummer Night's Dream. That's right. We've got Midsummer on Wednesday and Friday of next week, and Hamlet on Thursday and Saturday. Okay, Paul, we are so looking forward to that, and we really wish you all the best of luck with that and all of your future endeavours. Thanks very much for joining me on the show. Thank you very much indeed, Ciara. Thank you. Good evening and welcome to tonight's edition of Artbeat with myself, Ciara Murphy. On tonight's show, I will be talking to Anna Wolfe, co-author of Polish Theatre Ireland's new production, The Passengers, at Dublin's The New Theatre. And I will also be...